When it comes to habits, we are like rats in a box, and it's actually a good thing. What if your habits are not about your willpower, but about how your brain responds to rewards and punishment? And that, my friends, is behaviorism. And if you want to be in the driving seat of your habits and your life in general, you will have to master the art of associations and reinforcement. Hi babies, welcome back to our channel, the corner of the internet where we talk about psychology and how we can apply it to our daily lives. It's me, Paula, and as a psychology student, I have to say that this topic that today we're going to dive in is one of the most interesting and life-altering ones out there, because it's not about our brain, it's not about how we can carve inside our head, but on how we behave and how we can change our behavior, not from the inside, but from the outside. And to understand this, we'll need to first understand what behaviorism is. Behaviorism is a branch of psychology and is the one that focuses on how our environment shapes our behavior, not our mental state, just the behavior, not through thoughts, feelings, perceptions. None of that matters right now. Everything that matters is reinforcement and conditioning, which are the things that alter our behavior. And if you want to understand the key to hacking your habits, just keep watching because you've clicked on the right video. Basically, those guys, and by those guys I mean like proper psychologists who knew a lot about research, took the only your actions stock to the extreme. This current was mostly developed in the mid 20th century, especially in the US. End of World War II. The US is literally the first and most important country in the world. Of course that the people living on it will think that, hey, we're literally the best. So, by the way, if any Americans watching this, I have nothing against you. The thing is, many European scholars went to the US in the mid of the 20th century because, hey, if there's a war in your country, you cannot actually develop your own science and research. And also, most of them feared for their life. Like the American dream, anyone can become whatever they want. That's why behaviorism was huge there. We don't care about your race, we don't care about your gender, we don't care about your socioeconomic background, we only care about how your actions can change. And to first understand how our behavior actually can be edited, we need to understand who created that and how did it happen. 19th century, okay? And there was this guy called Pavlov. And he was trying to understand how dogs digested food, and he happened to stumble upon behaviorism, which is hilarious because through ringing bells, he realized that the dogs salivated before getting the food, so that they associated the bell with having food because they wanted food. Therefore, they learned by associations, associating an object, which is the bell, with a reward, which is the food. This, of course, happens over time, but Pavlov's studies were literally the basis of behaviorism and to understand how we learn and associate. Another tip that you could benefit from is that we learned by associations, like most of us. Memorizing stuff is hard AF if we don't associate it with other stuff. For instance, when you're studying, I remember when I was back in like high school, the only thing I remember is the topics and the information that I have associated within a specific class, so with a visual image or with a smell. Another example would be when you like open an old perfume, you smell it, and you are all of a sudden heartbroken again. In conclusion, if you ever want to like memorize or ingrain something in your head, try to associate it with another sense. Like if you need to know a special date, associate it with a color or something. Actually, if you look into yourself, you'll realize that you've already been doing that because it's something so intrinsic in our human like psyche. Then one way that actually like benefited me a lot, and I hadn't even like noticed it, this classical conditioning, which is learning by associations, was waking up earlier. When I was 16, I started waking up super early in the morning to read. And now you're gonna be like, Paul, what the fuck? But yeah, bear with me. I used to do so because I wanted to read before the rest of my family were awake. So I could have like some time where I could like read alone. The thing is, over time, now I wake up at that time I used to set an alarm, now I don't. How is it? Because my brain already associates that moment in time that is when I wake up. It's already like ingrained in my head. Always associated waking up early with having a good time or having a time for like myself where no one else would bug me and I would be able to read. And by no one else, I mean my 10-year-old brother. So if you want to wake up earlier for whatever reason, for instance, a really good tip is to right away do something that you love. Okay, so Pavlov, classical conditioning, involuntary responses because they are automatic associations that your brain does. But now behaviorism goes a bit farther, because as I've previously mentioned, the US played a huge role in the discipline of behaviorism. So we have Pavlov, and then we have Skinner, the American dream guy who believed he could change anyone's behavior with anything. He believed he could make a pigeon do anything. And yeah, I know that's a bit hyperbolized, but he actually did a pretty good job with that. And what did he do with his pigeons? Basically, he would lock them in a cage or a box, and he would make them go crazy. Imagine you're locked in a room. Of course, you're gonna go a bit crazy, so you're gonna try to just open the things, and you're curiously gonna interact with the room because you wanna get out of the room or try to understand the situation. It's very human. So the pigeons would pull a lever, so something would happen. That something was food. Of course, food is the 101 best incentive ever in science when it comes to animals. So Skinner makes the pigeons do something. And when they realized that they could do that and they would be reinforced with something they liked, they would still do it all over again. And he played many experiments with them. Like he literally played them. He would make them pull the lever over and over and over again because they knew that they would get food, but they weren't getting food because he decided to not give them food. The pigeons would still do it because they had gotten food once by doing that. So here goes to show how our behavior works, because it's not completely rational. There's a part that's rational. Pulling the lever gives you food. But if you do it 40 times and you haven't gotten food anymore, maybe you should stop. But no, the pigeons would still go and do so. And it's hilarious. Also, he realized that if he put a pigeon who didn't know what was going on with a pigeon who already knew the lever technique, the dumb pigeon wouldn't learn from the other. They would still have to do the whole process. So yeah, here goes to show we can have some ideas of how people work by looking at them, but we don't truly understand and learn until we do it ourselves. That's a good thing that we should take into account. And he called it operative conditioning. And Skinner's operative conditioning was about reinforcement, so about the consequences you got from an action. And he found out that the pigeons acted to get something good or to avoid something bad. Now I want to give you an example that has both classical and operating conditioning that I think it's really interesting, because whenever you look at your phone, it's a bit of both. It's really interesting because I bet that whenever your phone goes zzz, you're like, hey, it's an immediate response to a stimuli. In this case, the notification. It's classical conditioning. But when we open our phones and we scroll to social media and all of a sudden someone has retweeted our tweet, we feel a high. And all of a sudden, when you see that your grandma's best friend has actually liked your story and you get a high, that's operative conditioning. You're being rewarded for posting a picture. And that is really interesting because we get a shit ton of rewards. And the more positive reinforcements we get, the more inclined to do a task we are. So you can have positive or negative reinforcements. Negative reinforcements with a child would be to punish it or to take something away from them. And a positive reinforcement would be to state how well they are doing. And the thing is, positive reinforcement is the best way to learn. So the next time you punish yourself mentally, so you're thinking and ruminating about something and realizing that you're a failure and that you should be much more ahead in life, sit back and hear what I'm about to say. Positive reinforcement is the best way you will actually get further in life. Bear it in mind. having a reward system is better than having a punishing one. And I know it sounds so blatantly obvious, but most of us are hardwired to focus on the bad stuff. But we're not machines, we do not act for the sake of acting. So, there was a guy called Talman, and he responded to the question, why? For instance, Pavlov would answer the question, what? What do? We learn by associations. And Skinner said, we also learn by reinforcement. Okay, that's a what, but why? Well, Tellman said that we have two cognitive effects in our brains that makes us change our behavior. And which are those? Well, the first one's purpose, which gives us a sense of motivation and drive to actually take action. And another is cognitive maps. And what are cognitive maps? Well, it's a mix of pattern recognition and adaptability to the environment, because we're not fixed. We're not an algorithm. It's not a 2 + 2 is 4, because it's not the same if you want to get out of a room. If the room is okay, then when the room is on fire. If it's on fire, you know where the exit is, but you will act differently. So that's why behaviorism is actually not only about acting and habits, but it's more about how we can speak and talk to ourselves to discipline ourselves in a way where we are more proponed to change for the better. Let me give you a step-by-step guide on how to build a habit. First, choose what you want to acquire, what you want to build or break in your life. Then identify the behavior you want to start doing. 3, you attach it to a cue or a trigger. It better be a positive reinforcement, guys. And once you find the thing you're gonna reward yourself with, you just link it, like the action with the reward, and you repeat it constantly until it becomes automatic. And now we're gonna talk about the frequency of reinforcements. I'm not kidding, there's literally a function on that, but I'm not gonna get mathy here. I'm just gonna explain to you that you can acquire a new habit by rewarding yourself by the number of times that you do something or over time. If a teacher wants to reward a child that's behaving well in class, she's more likely to reward this child. 15 minutes she will tell to the child, hey, you're doing a great job. It's not after every goal or little achievement. So you can play with it, you can adapt it. You have the time and the repeated action. Also, rewards can be fixed or variable. At first, most of them are fixed, but once the habit is being automatized, it becomes more of a variable. And with all that said, guys, I hope you enjoyed this video on behaviorism and how you can build habits and edit your behavior with what some maybe crazy scientists used to do 1 and 2 centuries ago. And before you change all those habits that you want to change, ask yourself this question. Because I'm also, and tell me if you know an actual answer, because I'm really curious. Which habits have you been fed by design? If you enjoyed the video, enjoy my content, you can subscribe for more content on how to translate psychology into our daily lives. And yeah, have a really nice week. Mwah.